My parents called me the family failure. My sister was the golden child, a high-powered lawyer, a perfect life. This is a true family betrayal that destroyed everything, a story of family drama, revenge, and justice. Because when the person everyone protects is the villain, someone has to tell the truth. My parents always made it clear that my journalism career was an embarrassment compared to my sister's high-powered legal job. But while they were bragging about her salary at family dinners, I was busy uncovering the criminal empire paying for it. My name is Alexa Brooks, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the family footnote, the draft that didn't quite make the final cut. My sister, Sarah, was the headline. She was 2 years older, 3 inches taller, and, according to my mother, infinitely more successful. Sarah was a partner at a prestigious corporate law firm in the city, driving a Porsche and living in a penthouse that looked like a museum exhibit. I, on the other hand, was an investigative journalist for a mid-sized digital publication. I drove a 10-year-old sedan that rattled when I went over 40 miles an hour, and I rented a studio apartment that smelled faintly of my neighbor's curry. To my parents, the math was simple. Sarah made money, therefore Sarah was good. I made significantly less money, therefore I was a failure. It didn't matter that I had exposed a slumlord ring the previous year or that I was currently working on stories that gave a voice to the voiceless. In the Brooks household, integrity didn't pay the mortgage, so it wasn't worth discussing. The dynamic was never more painful than at our monthly family dinners. These were mandatory torture sessions held at my parents' suburban estate, a house that was far too big for 2 retired people, maintained solely to impress neighbors they didn't even like. I remember one dinner in particular, about 6 months before everything imploded. It was my 29th birthday, though you wouldn't have known it from the conversation. We were seated around the mahogany dining table, picking at an overpriced roast. My mother, a woman who wore her judgment like expensive perfume, set down her wineglass and beamed at Sarah. "So, Sarah, tell us about the new acquisition. Your father says it's going to be a massive windfall for the firm." Sarah didn't just speak, she performed. She leaned back, swirling her Pinot Noir, looking every inch the corporate shark. "Oh, it's huge, Mom. Sterling and Vance is handling the merger for Oakhaven Holdings. It is complicated, lots of moving parts in offshore accounts to minimize tax liability, strictly legal, of course, but the commission? Let's just say I'm looking at a bonus this year that could buy a small island." My father, a retired banker who measured human worth in net assets, clapped his hands together. "That is my girl. See? That is what ambition looks like. You grab the world by the throat and you shake it until the money falls out." Then, inevitably, the spotlight turned to me. It wasn't a warm spotlight. It was an interrogation lamp. "And you, Alexa?" my father asked, his voice dropping an octave in enthusiasm. "Still writing those little blog posts about, what is it this week, recycling centers?" "It's an exposé on municipal corruption regarding waste management contracts, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's actually a really important story about how tax dollars are being stolen." My mother sighed, a sound that conveyed a lifetime of disappointment. "Important. You always use that word. But does it pay? Sarah is buying an island, and you are writing about garbage. Do you see the difference, Alexa? One requires talent and drive. The other is just complaining in print." Sarah smirked. "Don't be too hard on her, Mom. Someone has to write the things people read while they're sitting on the toilet. It's a public service, really." They all laughed. My parents, my sister, they laughed at my passion, my career, my life. I sat there, gripping my fork so hard my knuckles turned white, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table, but I didn't. I just took a bite of dry roast and swallowed the humiliation, just like I had for 29 years. But the universe has a funny way of balancing the scales. 2 weeks later, I was at my desk, staring at a wall of sticky notes, when an encrypted email landed in my inbox. In my line of work, you get a lot of crank messages, conspiracy theorists, people with grudges against their neighbors, but this one was different. The subject line was simply, "The truth about Oakhaven." My heart skipped a beat. Oakhaven. That was the client Sarah had bragged about. I opened the email. It was from an anonymous source. No name, no return address, just a Proton mail account. The body of the text was short. "You write about corruption. Look closer at home. Sterling and Vance aren't just minimizing taxes. They are washing blood money. Check the Cayman shell companies listed in the attachment. Your sister's signature is on the transfer orders." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I opened the attachment. It was a PDF, hundreds of pages of bank transfers, incorporation documents, and emails. I started reading, and within an hour, the coffee in my mug had gone ice cold, and my world had shifted on its axis. The documents outlined a massive money laundering operation. Oakhaven Holdings wasn't a legitimate business. It was a front for a cartel operating out of South America. They were funneling millions of dollars in illegal drug profits through a complex network of shell companies, eventually bringing it back into the U.S. economy as clean construction revenue. And the law firm facilitating it all? Sterling and Vance. But the kicker, the detail that made me feel physically ill, was the involvement of the senior partners. And right there, listed as the lead associate overseeing the structuring of these accounts, was Sarah Brooks. I saw her signature. I saw her initials on memos discussing how to hide the source of funds. There was even an email from her personal work account joking about how the laundry cycle was running on high speed. My sister wasn't just a lawyer defending bad people. She was a criminal, a high-level, white-collar criminal helping to clean money that came from violence and misery. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. My parents' words echoed in my head. That is what ambition looks like. The daughter with the integrity. They had mocked me for chasing the truth while praising Sarah for hiding it. I had a choice to make. I could delete the email. I could call Sarah and warn her. I could go to my parents and try to handle this as a family matter. If I did that, Sarah might lose her license, but she might avoid prison. The family name would be safe. Then I remembered the dinner. I remembered the smirk. I remembered 20 years of being treated like a failure because I refused to sell my soul for a paycheck. I didn't delete the email. I hit reply. "I'm listening. Send me everything you have." For the next 3 months, I lived a double life. By day, I went to the office and worked on my little blog posts, as my father called them. By night, I was piecing together the biggest story of my career. I met with my anonymous source in a parking garage. Cliché, I know, but necessary. She was a paralegal at Sterling and Vance who had been asked to shred documents and got suspicious. She had saved digital copies before wiping the servers. She told me everything. "Your sister is the golden girl there," the source told me, handing over a flash drive. "The partners love her because she doesn't ask moral questions. She just asks how much the fee is. She knows exactly where that money comes from, Alexa. We all suspected it, but she knows. She's had meetings with the cartel representatives." Armed with this new information, I began building the narrative. I connected the dots between the drug busts in Miami and the luxury condo developments in Chicago, with Sarah's law firm acting as the bridge. I verified every transaction. I cross-referenced the shell companies. I built a case so airtight that not even the most expensive defense attorney in the world could poke a hole in it. During this time, I still had to endure the family. My mother called me constantly to nag. "Alexa, are you coming to the gala at the museum? Sarah bought a table. It's $500 a plate. But don't worry, Sarah is paying for your ticket since we know you can't afford it. Try to dress nicely for once. Maybe ask Sarah to borrow one of her old dresses. You are about the same size, though you have let yourself go a bit lately." I went to the gala. I wear my own dress, a simple black number from a thrift store that fit me perfectly. I watched Sarah hold court surrounded by the city's elite. She looked radiant, practically glowing with arrogance. She introduced me to her colleagues as my little sister, the blogger. "Oh, Alexa," Sarah said, draping a diamond-encrusted arm around my shoulder. "I actually have a favor to ask. I'm being profiled for Legal Eagle magazine's 30 Under 30 list next month. Since you write stuff, maybe you could help me polish my bio? I want to make sure the tone is humble but powerful. Make me sound like a savior of the corporate world." I looked at her. I looked at the diamonds that were bought with laundered drug money. I looked at my parents, beaming with pride at their criminal masterpiece of a daughter. "I'd be happy to write something about you, Sarah," I said, a small, genuine smile playing on my lips. "In fact, I'm already working on a piece that features you prominently. I think it's going to be the most read article of the year." My father laughed, slapping my back a little too hard. "Good for you, Alexa, finally riding your sister's coattails to get some views, eh? That's smart. Stick with the winner." "Stick with the winner," I repeated softly. "I'll keep that in mind." I didn't write a bio for Legal Eagle. I wrote a 5,000-word exposé titled "The Glass House: How Sterling and Vance Built an Empire on Cartel Cash." I submitted the draft to my editor, Mark. Mark was a gruff, cynical veteran of the newsroom who rarely showed emotion. He read the piece in silence. When he finished, he took off his glasses and looked at me with wide eyes. "Alexa," he said, his voice quiet, This is a Pulitzer. But you know who this is. This is your sister. If we run this, you are nuking your family. There is no coming back from this. Are you sure?" I thought about the garbage comment. I thought about the gala. I thought about the victims of the cartel whose money Sarah was protecting. "Print it," I said, "and call the FBI. We are going to coordinate the release with the authorities." The story went live on a Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Simultaneously, I handed over my entire dossier of evidence to the district attorney's office and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I was sitting in the newsroom when the story broke. The internet exploded. Within an hour, it was trending globally. The headline was everywhere. The website traffic nearly crashed our servers. At 9:30 a.m., my phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen for a moment, taking a deep breath. I answered. "Alexa!" she screamed. The sound was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "What have you done? What are these lies on the internet? People are calling us. Sarah is crying. She says there are reporters in the lobby of her building." "It's not a lie, Mom," I said calmly. "It's the truth. Sarah is laundering money for a cartel." "How dare you?" My father's voice roared in the background. He must have been on the extension. "You jealous, spiteful little failure. You made this up because you can't stand that she's better than you. I will sue you. I will have your job. You take that down right now." "I can't take it down, Dad. It's news. And I didn't make it up. The FBI has the documents. Sarah signed them." "You are dead to us," my mother shrieked. "Do you hear me? Dead. You have ruined this family." I hung up, and then I turned on the television in the break room. Every news channel had switched to live coverage of the Sterling and Vance headquarters. A fleet of black SUVs and police cruisers had surrounded the building. Agents in windbreakers with FBI emblazoned on the back were streaming into the lobby. I watched, mesmerized. About 20 minutes later, the doors opened. Several partners were led out in handcuffs, looking pale and terrified. And then, there she was, Sarah, the golden child, the headline act. She was wearing a cream-colored designer suit that probably cost more than my car. Her hands were cuffed behind her back. Her perfect hair was a mess. She looked small. She looked pathetic. As the officers guided her toward the waiting car, she looked directly at the camera. Her face wasn't one of arrogance anymore. It was a mask of pure terror. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel glee. I felt a profound sense of relief. The gaslighting was over. The lie was exposed. The fallout was catastrophic. The firm of Sterling and Vance was dissolved within weeks. Assets were frozen. The partners turned on each other instantly to cut deals, but the evidence against Sarah was too strong. Because she was the ambitious one, the one who wanted to impress the partners, she had put her name on everything. She was the linchpin. My parents tried to spin it. They told neighbors that I was mentally unstable, that I had fabricated evidence, that Sarah was a victim of a conspiracy. But then the trial started. I went to the trial every day. I sat in the back row taking notes for my follow-up articles. I watched as the prosecution laid out the timeline. I watched as my sister, the brilliant legal mind, stumbled and stuttered on the stand, unable to explain away the emails I had uncovered. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on 14 counts of money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The sentencing hearing was the final nail in the coffin. Sarah stood before the judge, weeping, begging for leniency, blaming her bosses, blaming the culture, blaming everyone but herself. The judge, a stern woman who had clearly read my articles, wasn't moved. "Miss Brooks," she said, peering over her glasses, "you were given every advantage in life, education, status, opportunity, and you used it to facilitate the poisoning of communities for personal gain. You are not a victim. You are the architect." Sarah was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. My parents were in the front row. My mother collapsed. My father sat there, stone-faced, looking older than I had ever seen him. As the bailiffs led Sarah away, she turned and scanned the courtroom. Her eyes locked on mine in the back row. She stopped struggling. For a second, we just looked at each other. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. I just nodded. Once, acknowledging the truth. She was led out the side door, and the golden era of Sarah Brooks was officially over. I walked out of the courthouse and was immediately swarmed by reporters. They wanted a quote from the sister who brought down the empire. They wanted to know how it felt. I looked into the microphones and said, "The truth matters. No matter how much money you dress it up in, a lie is still a lie. I'm just doing my job." That night, I went back to my studio apartment. It was quiet. My phone had stopped ringing. I had blocked my parents' numbers weeks ago after they sent me a letter threatening to hire a hitman, an empty threat, but enough to warrant a restraining order. I sat on my cheap couch and opened my laptop. I had an email from the Pulitzer Committee. My series had been nominated. But the real victory wasn't the award. It wasn't even seeing Sarah in prison, though I won't pretend that wasn't satisfying. The real victory was realizing that I wasn't the failure. A few months later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that my parents were in financial ruin. Apparently, they had invested the majority of their retirement savings into Oak Haven Holdings on Sarah's advice, thinking they were getting in on the ground floor of a miracle stock. When the government seized the assets, my parents lost everything. The big house, the cars, the country club memberships, gone. They were forced to sell the estate and move into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. My father had to go back to work as a consultant, but no one wanted to hire the father of the notorious cartel lawyer. I haven't spoken to them since the day the story broke. I don't need to. I have my answer to their years of criticism. They wanted success. I became the most respected journalist in the city. They wanted fame. I made the family name famous worldwide. They wanted justice. I gave it to them. Now I have a new job at a major national paper. The pay is better, but I still drive my old sedan. It reminds me of where I came from. It reminds me that while Sarah had the Porsche, she was driving it toward a cliff. Sometimes people ask me if I regret sending my own sister to prison, if I feel bad about destroying my family. I think about the dinners. I think about the sneers. I think about the people hurt by the criminals my sister protected. And I sleep like a baby, because my parents were right about one thing: there is a difference between us. One of us built a life on deception, and the other built a life on truth. They just bet on the wrong horse. I'm Alexa Brooks. I was the family failure. Now I'm the only one left standing. If this story made you feel something, anger, relief, or satisfaction, make sure you're subscribed. More stories are coming.